Welcome, everyone. It is Super Bowl Sunday, February 12th, 2023, and this is the Morgellons Call of the Week. I am Robin from Western Massachusetts, the co-host. I'm thrilled to be here with you guys today. It's a cold, gray day here in Western Mass, but it's sunny in this call. And I'm thrilled to be part of what Richard Kuhns is doing, because so many people, through the diet, the protocols, Richard's book, Richard's being here every Sunday to answer questions, his deep insights and concern for everyone with Morgellons is changing lives. That's the bottom line. Lives are getting changed. People are getting healed. It's a wonderful thing to be a part of. And I'm so grateful for Richard. It's not just head knowledge, and it's not just, there's so many, even like homeopathic doctors, they're great, but they have solutions for parasites that actually feed Morgellons, because they haven't experienced it. They're just going by things in a book, So Richard has experienced it. He has experienced all of it. He's experienced mites, springtails, Morgellons, intestinal parasites. And I could never say that. Strongyloides. I think I got it this time. Yeah. Ha. So anyway, and he got better. He's well. He got his life back, and he shares all these solutions with us. His book, which is in the 12th edition, is like an encyclopedia of how to get well. Each chapter gives you multiple choices. If this doesn't work, you can do this. If this doesn't work, you can do this. And it's just amazing. It's really amazing. So welcome to the call, everyone, and it's my privilege and honor to welcome and introduce Richard Kuhns, the author of How to Get Your Life Back from Morgellons and Other Skin Parasites.
Thank you, Robin. So who are you betting on for the Super Bowl?
I don't know. I only like the commercials.
I know Kansas City's playing, and I don't know who they're playing against, but I'll tune in later. Anyway, I got to warn you. My grandchildren were over, and they brought their doctor's kit, and they gave me a new brain. They did a brain transplant, so I'm not sure how this one's going to work. But here we go. The topic of the day. What the hell is Morgellons? I mean, every week I get pictures, people sending me pictures. Mary, would you read the first one here? We got a couple of them.
I have pitched most things that you have recommended, and now we have the pills from the other doctor. He is not getting better. We called the infectious disease clinic, but you need a letter from your primary doctor, and his doctor thinks it's all in his head, so he won't give the referral. I am attaching some pictures I took of these parasites coming out of his nose and his toe. Can you identify them for me, please? And now he thinks he should be getting them out of his head. So he tries to pull them out, and his head is now a mass of sores. His eyes are so bad with them at times. Please, can you advise? I feel so helpless. I don't want him to hurt himself.
So what does this picture look like?
Oh
If you look at that picture, what do you see? What does it look like?
It is so gross. It looks like a worm, like a dark brown worm that's been split open so that it's kind of wide and flat, and she has it next to the head of a Q-tip. And it's slightly longer than like the cotton end of a Q-tip, and it's just nasty.
Yeah, nasty looking. Yeah, is that Morgellons?
Not that it doesn't look like it to me, no.
What's the next one?
The next one says, after 3 years of twirling my hair to remove scaly things curled up in my hair under my scalp, this thing popped out. It seems I'm at the bottom layer. Have you seen this before? And it's a picture of, I don't know how to describe it. It almost looks like a miniature beehive.
Indescribable, huh?
Yeah,
but it's not delicious.
No.
But it's indescribable.
Yeah.
Hey, you can pretty well bet. I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose, and so everybody's sending me pictures and asking me to diagnose them. But you can pretty well bet that if it looks weird or odd, it's connected somehow to Morgellons. Now, with respect to the first email, my question is, and I've had emails with this, I think her name, Valerie, before, about her son. Is he on the, what, Robin?
Diet.
Yeah. Is he on the diet? Has he done the diet? Because that is paramount to dealing with parasites. So people send me these pictures and ask if they have Morgellons based on photographs that who knows what the heck it could be. It wasn't taken by a lab, somebody in a lab, so we can't really say that the source. We can't, we can only go by what they describe. So, but the bottom line is Morgellons. The only thing that really characterizes any of this as Morgellons is if you read Dr. Saverly's book, The Legitimization of a Disease, Morgellons, and it's characterized by the growth of filaments and fibers. She calls them filaments because we don't want them mixed up with fibers that come from clothing, perhaps. So the question is, are there filaments and fibers growing from lesions or from your skin? If there are, then that is, according to her, Morgellons. Now, no two people in the whole wide world have exactly the same symptomatology. Along with these filaments and fibers can be all kinds of weird, ugly things accompanying them. In fact, there are no two people that have exactly the same filaments and fibers. They don't have exactly the same color. I mean, they can be various colors. They can be anything like yellow, orange. They can be black, white, and they can be long, they can be short, they can be, who knows, there are many different colors of these filaments and fibers, and then some of them can be microscopic in size. You need a 60-power scope to see it, and again, they could be of different colors. So generally, we can say that if there are strange filaments and fibers, and they generally fluoresce. In other words, if you put them under fluorescent light or a black light, you'll see them fluoresce, which is typically a way of knowing that they are Morgellons. So no two people have exactly the same filaments and fibers. Now let's go on to that. Go on. Now some people have nodules. I think doctors generally describe that as purgio nodularis, but not everybody. Some have aches and pains and fibromyalgia, and many don't. Some report sparklies all over their skin, many don't. Some have stomach and intestinal issues, and many don't. Some have non-healing lesions, and many don't. It's different for everybody. No two people have exactly the same symptomatology. Some have issues with their teeth and their mouth. Many don't. Some are paranoid and exhibit bipolar symptoms. Many don't. Some have brain fog. Many don't. Some have disfiguring lesions on their face, and many don't. Some have rashes of varying size, color, and location and intensity, and many don't. Some have brain fog, some don't. Some have intense itching, and some don't. Most experience the feelings of being bitten, but some don't. And some have burning skin, and others don't. Some have intense scalp issues, others don't. Some have hives near their anus, but most don't. And the list goes on and on, gets more complicated because of all these symptoms listed. In addition to the strange filaments, there are organisms and goo. Some report that they have goo coming from their skin. It could be different color. It could be black. It could be white. It could be different, biofilm. And some don't. Some have organisms coming from their skin. Now, these organisms, much like the photograph that, I'm not able to actually show you each, but don't look like anything normal. One gal sent me a photograph of a spider. How many legs do spiders have? Robin?
8.
8 legs. Well, this one had 16. I mean, unfortunately, the picture was not really clear. You could see the 16 legs, but I couldn't really tell. Well, is it one spider or is it one spider on top of another exactly positioned? I couldn't tell, but, I go by her word. This spider had 16 legs. I mean, so some have things coming out of their skin that look cocoon-like waspy, some have wormy things coming out of their skin, like the photograph that Mary was describing. Some have barbs, plastic-like, metal-like looking barbs, could be 3/4 of an inch in length. One lady had one that was about 3 inches in length, typically coming out of her skin. So all of these people have different things coming out of their skin. No two have exactly the same thing even coming out of their skin. And so going back to what I said, no two people with Morgellons have exactly the same symptomatology. Now, I've learned this over 20 years of people writing me letters and emails and sending me pictures and photographs that have been dealing with Morgellons. The commonality of all of them is filaments and fibers growing from your skin. And from that can be all kinds of other weird things, from goo to organisms to who knows what, that emanate from one's skin. Now, what is Morgellons? What is it caused by? Well, there are many theories, and if you watch YouTube and if you research it, and as Robin said earlier, each of you are my research team. So over the years, many of you have written me emails and contributed links to research papers and other information that has been extremely important in me gathering a better understanding of Morgellons. So, but many people look at it and treat it as Lyme disease. That is something that is caused by a spirochete, one of 2 types of spirochetes. There are some people who actually believe there could be as many as maybe 200 variations of spirochetes that are there. But spirochetes is a bacterial thing, and goes all the way back to the 30s, with syphilis being probably one of the first spirochetes that was discovered. And of course, we all know it's treated by the typical antibiotic. What is that old-time antibiotic? Penicillin, yes, okay. So, but unfortunately, Lyme disease, a different type of spirochete, is not managed by penicillin. And you know, there are even people who believe that the underlying impact of Morgellons is from syphilis. You know, syphilis is not something that people generally or doctors generally look for and can be overlooked. And so there's one fellow who believes that many people, they have syphilis and it hasn't been identified, and that's what they need to do. They need to get tested for syphilis and get it handled, and then that will solve Morgellons. So there are the people who are in the spirochete level of thinking and attack it as a spirochete. Now, the interesting thing is that research done and published on the Charles Holman site, the research done by Middleveen and Strickler. They've done several pilot studies. One of them reports that 90% of the people that they researched in their pilot study, I think it maybe 12 people or something of that nature in their pilot study, 90% of them had Lyme disease. But that's not 100%. No, that's not 100%. So I could say that, from that research, it basically says that Morgellons is not Lyme disease, although 90% of us who have Morgellons can be dealing with Lyme disease. So if you treat Lyme disease, all right, let me say something. Those of you who are familiar with a chessboard, I don't play chess, but I'm, familiar with the board. The most important piece on the board is, which piece is it, Robin?
Well, the king.
The king. The king is the most important piece. He's not the most powerful piece. No. He's the most important piece, but not the most powerful. The most powerful piece is the queen. Right. And then we have the rooks, and we have the bishops, and we have the knights, and then we have the pawns. Now, those are the important pieces. So look at Morgellons like the king. And he's defended by the queen, the bishops. So if the queen happens to be Lyme disease and you knock off Lyme disease, well, the king pretty much is history. So Morgellons is not really a big, bad problem. It's all the cofactors and identifying, if you can, which cofactor and using a protocol that, in large, knocks out those cofactors. Now, the problem with the cofactors is, even starting with Lyme disease, there aren't really good diagnostic tools. Now, many of these cofactors, the other thing is that many of these cofactors can be dormant for years, including Lyme disease. You could have Lyme disease for years and be not bothered by it. No symptoms. Along comes Morgellons, and it could suddenly be the queen and be the problem. So if Lyme disease is the queen, you knock her out, and then you can take care of Morgellons. And that seems to be the approach of the doctors associated with the Charles Holman Association in utilizing antibiotics to knock out Lyme disease. But now, there are other people, if you go on YouTube, you will find videos. I forget this fellow, he's a European, and he claims that Morgellons is fungus, some kind of fungal organism. And that, he doesn't really say what it is, but there are different kinds of there are hundreds of fungal organisms: Candida albicans, blastomycosis. The list is endless. Now, again, from my experience, Morgellons is not fungal. It may be true that 90% of us who do deal or have Morgellons do have fungal issues. And if that particular fungal issue is the queen, you knock her out. And so therefore I get emails that say, well, I took this antifungal medication and my Morgellons went away. All right, fantastic. You were lucky and identified the queen and got rid of her, and Morgellons is handled. But it's not always fungal. It's not always necessarily spirochetes and Lyme disease. There are slime mold issues, and that could be, again, it's a fungal thing. So the moldy environment accounts for maybe 20% of the people. Now, there are about 15% of the people having nematodes in their throat, their ears, and their head. So the nematodes, intestinal parasites, can be the queen for some of them. Again, intestinal parasites can be with you and live with you for years and be dormant. No problem. And along comes Morgellons and boom. Now, it may not necessarily only be Morgellons that comes along, because there are other factors, cofactors in the environment that are added to. You know, the movie, The Perfect Storm, if you've ever seen that movie, it kind of demonstrates how many of these hurricanes, like Hurricane Sandy, and then we have the hurricanes that were in the Texas area and Florida, they kind of get, you know, different kinds of things come together at the same time to create this perfect storm. So this also means it's important to look at other factors that contribute, such as 5G or EMF and things like glyphosate and the glyphosate, which is basically a natural antibiotic, but it's used to get rid of plants. And so, but we consume it, and it contributes to eroding our gut biome. So it's important to look at the overall picture of this perfect storm to see how bad the storm really is, because, again, Morgellons varies in intensity. Some people are dramatically impacted by it. Many minimally impacted by it. Oh, one partner in the marriage may say, you know, I see my husband, he's got it, but he doesn't acknowledge it. He thinks I'm crazy, you know, and me, it drives me nuts. So they may be carriers of it. So not everybody is even impacted to the same degree. So you see how confusing it can be for people who, you know, come up with it and don't understand it, and how confusing it can be for physicians or doctors or anybody else trying to understand it. No wonder they get pigeonholed and think it's one thing. You know, there are actually some people who believe Morgellons is an organism that can eat wood or concrete, ceramics, and metal. That's reported on one website. Now, yes, and it is true. It drove me, I couldn't believe it. It sounded like something out of science fiction. How could this be possible? Well, remember I talked about the different kinds of organisms. You see, Morgellons is a DNA thing. It hijacks and it modifies DNA of regular type of organisms. And there are actually organisms that produce enzymes that can erode concrete, ceramics, or anything of that nature, wood, or anything that it comes in contact with. But it is not Morgellons. It is the fact that Morgellons has modified the DNA of these organisms to look like something else or be something else. And then there are people who believe it has to do with myiasis, infection of fly larvae kind of things coming from a tropical or subtropical areas. And many people do report that after vacationing abroad and they come back, they do have this issue with myiasis, and Morgellons is associated with it. And again, there you have these different types of larvae developing in the dermis and emanating from the skin that don't look normal, that don't look real. And you could take it to any doctor or any lab technician, and they won't be able to identify it because there's no known species that they can compare it to. It's just different. There are people who believe that it's associated with metal toxicity, like amalgam fillings having mercury in them. And true, that could be a factor, and if you clear up the toxicity, because you know what? If you do research on Lyme disease, it won't take long for you to discover that Lyme disease loves toxicity. And what is accumulated mercury and nickel and cadmium and pesticides in your cellular structure over the toxicity? Every cell of your body becomes a food source for spirochetes and strengthens it. So, I mean, there's people who are dealing with filariasis, a tropical disease by the presence of a filarial worm, protozoan like Babesia. This, kicks in with Lyme disease very often. Amoebas, they're a contributing factor in some cases. Spirotosis, this is a popular one on the web. You'll find, Rose Gardner's disease, it's a fungus. And people have reported to me that, they had an incident where they fell into a rose bush. And then, after that, they noticed these filaments and fibers coming from their skin. So definitely. And of course, with spirotosis, the thing that often works with that is the supersaturated potassium iodide, which we do happen to have in the store as well. Dermatitis, I'm not even sure I can pronounce this, hepatiformis, people who have celiac disease. So this is a contributing factor that can aggravate certain situations. It can even come down to basic bacterial infestations. And, there are things like common typical bacterium like Pseudomonas. In fact, my first wife came down with leukemia, and she passed away. She didn't die from leukemia. When you have certain infections, your immune system is significantly compromised, and simple bacteria like Pseudomonas take over, and that was on her death certificate. So one fellow wrote me and said, hey, my Morgellons went away. The doctor identified, and there were two kinds of common bacteria that came up in his lab results, and they was treated for him, and his Morgellons went away. So again, you want to look at the power play on the chessboard, the queen, the bishop, the knight. You want to figure it out and get rid of it. There's a schistmatosis caused by flukes, parasitic flatworms, tapeworms. And I did even mention Strongyloides cervicalis, which is the one that Robin has fun remembering how to pronounce, and it's something that comes up at about 20%, 25% of all of us who are dealing with Morgellons and skin parasites. So Morgellons is none of these things. Morgellons is simply the filaments and fibers. People believe it's connected with artificial intelligence and the seeding of the clouds. However, I don't remember anybody writing me and telling me after they were exposed to the seeding clouds that these things automatically started coming, that the filaments started growing. I'm not saying it's not connected, but it's generally through contact with something, whether it be while you're gardening, or in my case, while I was pulling vines from a tree, or sitting on a toilet seat that's infected, or being in the vicinity of someone else that's infected. it's generally from a large load of organisms, filaments and fibers that one is in contact with, or could be from a pet, and it could be vice versa. Dr. Saverly believes that pets are capable of giving the Morgellons to human beings. Well, I think it goes both ways, and that we are contagious. So there are, well, where to start? Well, where to start with this whole big mess is, what's the number one thing to start with?
Read the book.
The reading the book is good, and then after you read the book, and particularly chapter 4, where do you start?
The diet.
The diet. I think I'm making a mistake. I'm giving this diet away. I should be charging $1,000 for it. I should be, because people don't really believe, because I give it away, that it's the crux, that it's the key. They don't believe it. They think they got to find some medication somewhere that's going to do it. Well, true, the medications are going to perhaps be helpful, and some of the things can be helpful. One guy said Kenazole cream cured him. Well, obviously that was a fungal thing, and he lucked out. And another said a big YouTube thing about baking soda cured him. All right, so again, switch in pH in your body helps. Some claim that Fenben cured them. Well, and many have written me and said, well, Lefiniron cured them. Well, that tells me that it was fungal related, and fortunately, Fenben and Lefiniron are part of our protocol. So, but it all works when you make the diet work. And the protocol that I have pretty much takes care of all of this. We build your health with vitamins and minerals that are compatible with the diet. We boost glutathione. Glutathione gets rid of, what does glutathione do? Well, take a look, for instance, at Lyme disease. Remember, I said Lyme disease loves toxicity. Well, glutathione happens to be the body's major detoxifier. It gets rid of that mercury. Sure. Go to the dentist, have them drill out all your old fillings, spend $10,000 and have all those old amalgam fillings replaced with brand new spanking fillings. Go ahead. Or boost your glutathione. It's a no-brainer. You need glutathione. You don't have to necessarily get rid of all those fillings and spend $10,000. Take that other $9,000 and invest in your health and building and healthy function. So build your glutathione. We have a natural antibiotic. According to WebMD, it's a natural antibiotic, antiviral, antiprotozoan, antifungal, antiparasitic, the Garcillin. So the protocol that we have is tremendous. It covers. We look at Lefiniron, we look at fenbenzidol, we look at nitimpiram. The very first lady wrote and said that her son had been taking nitimpiram and hasn't been getting any better. Well, what does that tell you? It's not mites. That's something I didn't even talk about, mites. There are probably 100% of us who are dealing with Morgellons and also dealing with some kind of mite. And that mite could very well be the queen on the chessboard. So, well, the good news is the protocol handles that. But for this fellow, it wasn't mites. If his queen on his chessboard were mites, the nitimpiram would have taken care of it, assuming he's on the diet. And I don't get and suspect that he really had made the diet work. So all of this stuff works when you make the diet work. It all comes together. We have calcium Daclex, which is undecoic acid to deal with fungal issues. We have kyanase enzymes, which also deals with fungal issues and inhibits the production of chitin and also dissolves biofilm. We've got gut restore because most of us, we have our guts that have been destroyed by the GMOs and the glyphosate, the Roundup that's glyphosate is the technical name for Roundup herbicide, which is used in chemical farming that gets into our food supply and can disrupt our gut biome, contribute to leaky gut syndrome, contributes to the candida getting from the intestinal tract into every organ of your body and becoming life-threatening. So our protocol basically covers most of it. Probably 90% of the at least 90% of the cofactors that could be issues, even strongyloides. The protocol covers that as well. So the problem is that there is no, what we need is we need somebody with about $1 billion who could set up laboratory testing and test for all of these organisms. But you know what? We don't really need it because the protocol handles most of it. So if the protocol doesn't really handle it, well, then there's some organism that is not defined or handled in the protocol that is important to find out about. Like there's this one lady who she came back from a trip, and fortunately for her, she went to the right doctor with the right understanding. Now, how many of them are you going to find? Who knew what to test for, at least knew how to test for things, and identified Mannacinella perstans. Hell, I had never heard of that before. It's a filarial nematode transmitted by blood-sucking flies called midges. All right. And the doctor knew how to treat her, and away went Morgellons. So if the protocol for some reason doesn't work, well, then there is some additional testing, which I'm not familiar, but again, 90% of us are going to basically get their lives back with the protocol. Now, the FDA requires me to inform everybody that before you start the Morgellons diet, as previously known as the King diet, before you accept any of our recommendations or my recommendations or any of those of my coaches, is that you discuss them thoroughly with your medical doctor to make sure they do not interfere with any health problems that you may be experiencing. The AMA also requires me to inform you that I am not here to diagnose, treat, cure, or mitigate any disease. I do not have the credentials to do that, so can only educate you, and that's what this program is about today, is to educate you as to what Morgellons really is. And it's not the big bad thing we thought it was, it's the cofactors that are the issue, and when we solve the problem with the cofactors, Morgellons often becomes history. Okay, do you have anything to add to that, Robin? We're going to wrap up this segment.
I just wanted to say, I know everyone wants to identify what is this, what is this, what is this, but you know what? As you mentioned, 90% of whatever it is you'll get better by following the protocols and the diet.
Right. Even with,
I feel like it almost doesn't matter if you do the things that are in the book and the diet, you're going to get better. You're going to get your life back.
Yeah, even with Lyme disease, tests, what value are they? They're of little value, because as soon as you get tested and you get back and it says, oh, I got Lyme disease, well, then the doctor says, well, there are false positives.
Right.
Or if you get tested, and it comes up negative, well, there are false negatives. The only way to get truly tested for Lyme disease is through microscopy. And the book mentions a lab, I think in Scottsdale, Arizona, that I believe does microscopy. So if it's that important, go there. But my contention is that if you build immune functioning through vitamins, then the vitamins that we have are designed for Lyme disease. Boost your minerals, because minerals are very important, and boost your glutathione, as I talked about, and utilize the garcillin, which is, as I said, a natural antibiotic, antiviral, according to WebMD and Wikipedia. You may need no further treatment, and I'm allowed to tell you how to boost that. I'm not saying it's a cure, but it will certainly work for me. And guess what? There are so many people here that get their lives back. So many people, and they didn't do it by accident.